That where it's more like after they have burned their fingers, coming back and asking for help or anything which we could do. I mean, any experience with respect to Indian companies as such, like?
Absolutely. I mean, many such experiences without really taking names.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Right. So we have like fairly large companies who have kind of released their products into the market, and let's say they go ahead and try to export it, let's say, into the US market,
Okay.
right? And somebody who is importing into the US market says that, okay, please go and get me a freedom to operate report, right? That is the first time they are hearing that, okay, there is something called as freedom to operate. What is this thing all about? And that is when their first realization comes in that, okay, if I have to like play into the US market, there is something called as patents, and my product needs to be such that I'm not infringing on somebody else's patents. And that is when they start thinking, right? And let's say somebody has already launched, they get sued.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they're like, we are getting sued because apparently my product infringes on somebody else's patents over there, and they want to kind of work on the product and see what will not infringe, so on and so forth. So likewise, we have situations wherein they have a very innovative product, they already launched it into the market, and after 3-4 years somebody started copying it, and then they come back and say that, okay, we were actually the first ones to do it, and this person is copying it, can I now go ahead and stop it? I mean, absolutely you cannot. You should have applied for a patent before you launched your product, right? So there have been like plenty of situations. At the same time, there are like plenty of situations wherein they've gone ahead and applied for a patent, gotten a patent, and somebody kind of tries to come in. All that is done is you send a cease and desist letter saying that I do have a patent, right? Now for that other competitor to work around something like that, it's going to be taking years.
True.
If they are committed.
Yeah.
Most of them, just saying that, okay, we have a patent, and this is how looks like this is how you are infringing on my patent, and you should stop doing it. That's sufficient to actually push competitors back. So it kind of plays out in both directions.
Yeah. So this is one kind of a scenario where probably they would have realized when they tried to export their products.
Yeah.
Where probably somebody else has already protected themselves in those countries, right? So if you talk about like probably this space where like probably there are quite a few different sectors, like if you have active sectors like textiles is one sector which has been quite active in India. If you talk about even before, right? Even today, I mean, we have a fair share of few textile production and other things, right? So that space, or probably if you talk about any other mining activities in that space or any other sectors there, right? So in these traditional sectors, I mean, have there been instances, I mean, like let's say they have really innovated something, got it, but they have no idea about all these things. They would have launched the product, and then comes the competitor who is kind of shooting them here, launching some counterfeits, right? The realization there, I mean, a lot of usually queries which come even today, I mean, which a lot of the IP consultants go through even today, is like a lot of people come there at that point. So what would your suggestion to those people would be? Like, because I mean, if somebody has to think about IP, let's say who is in the MSME segment, there are companies at different stages.
Right.
If you talk about companies, probably they've been in this space for about some 10-20 years. There could be some companies who have just ventured into that space, right? And there are companies who have been probably somewhere in between, right? Whatever. Right? So how should each of these companies think about IP if they want to have some protection for their services and products, whatever they're kind of building, right? What should be their first probably 3 questions which they should ask themselves maybe? If you
Right. So I would say that broadly comes in terms of a company setting out their business objectives to say that how am I going to compete in this market,
Right.
right? Am I going to compete purely based on pricing? Am I going to maintain good margins, and am I going to compete based on innovation, right? Or is it an industry wherein I can establish monopolies, right? Monopolies can come from monopolies can be established by different means. Monopolies can be established because you are in a sector wherein it's purely based on licenses. If you are able to get a license, nobody else will be able to operate. And monopolies can be set by protecting technology as well, right? Yeah. So at the very beginning,
one example, just for everybody's understanding, like probably if you talk about licensing, we are talking about more like the country determining
government licensing. Yeah,
like,
right.
You want to start a telecom company, it's not that
absolutely
easiest
right
thing to do.
Let's say I want to
regulations.
do some mining. I'm into the mining business.
There's so many regulations which
correct,
you have to
right? Maybe if you are purely into the mining business, you are not an engineering company. You're a mining business company wherein the business runs because you were able to get a government license to mine a particular place, right? So maybe that's IP does not even, at least patents do not even play a role. But for everybody else, wherein you cannot establish monopolies based on government licenses, and there is some aspect of technology, and you're playing the game based on technology, right? You will have to think about how do we, innovate, and how do we protect that innovation, right? So that thought process has to be from top down, right? And for somebody to even consider that, okay, patent is one functional area that should come in my entire strategy for business, somebody who is a key decision maker should have some understanding of saying that, okay, there is an ecosystem like this, and broadly this is how this patent system kind of plays out, right? So as long as that is clear, right, you have plenty of people to kind of help you, right? You have patent consultant, so on and so forth. That is a different journey altogether. But as long as at a company mindset level, you kind of acknowledge that this is an area where I can actually leverage. Once that is set, I think everything else will fall into place. Maybe there'll be instances wherein the first few instances you may not really get right, but you are there for the long run. So eventually you'll get it right.
Right. So I think, having said that, I mean, whatever you just said, even for the licensing, heavy licensing oriented businesses, even for them, if they want to be competitive in the international level, probably these licensings are probably not seeking licenses or getting licenses for those sectors may not be as stringent in every country.
True.
Right? I mean, the complexity kind of varies.
Yeah.
So even for those traditional companies who have been actively involved in this mining or other related areas, even for them to be competitive, it is very essential for them to also protect their IP.
No, what you're saying is true. That depends on the aspiration of the company also, right? So let's say I am a pure mining company or a refining company, and I come up with certain processes or technologies wherein the throughput, or let's say the yield that I get is much better as compared to somebody else. So because you have that technology and you are able to protect that technology, you might be able to bid better.
True.
Because you have a competitive edge, because of which you probably has a better result on your profits. So yes, so even they can do that, but really depends on what's the aspiration of the of that company itself. True. How do they perceive themselves? What is the future that they think for themselves?
Yeah. In a way, to sum it up, I mean, IP, not just patents, but also other all forms of IP, which are at least at a larger extent, we are talking about trademarks, copyrights, and designs, any designs which they may have, along with patents. Right. So all these things should be looked upon as more like an investment and assets.
Correct.
Rather than
a liability
and an administrative cost.
Absolutely.
Basically, that's the thought process which everybody should approach the IP budgeting when they venture into any kind of a business beforehand, and having a consultant coming in probably at the very beginning.
I mean, think of any large company, right?
Right.
Think of your Google, Microsoft, Facebook, any large company. I mean, they have invested heavily on patents. They have huge patent portfolios. So even if you were to consider that, okay, I'll just play by the playbook of a large successful technology company, that is what these people have done.
True.
So if you are going to be ignoring it, it's going to be only affecting you.
So the examples are right in front of our eyes, but a lot of people fail to understand how they have been sustaining the growth. Consistency.
I mean, you cannot be scaling and growing and becoming more profitable by saving.
True.
You can only be doing that by creating barriers for
taking those extra additional risks and making sure those risks are being protected.
Correct. That's right.
That's something. Okay. Having said that, now I mean, if we get back to your journey. Okay, we have been talking a lot about the patent side of things. So if we come back to your journey of being in this field for almost 20 years and all, and being an entrepreneur, that journey with InvnTree, I think it's about 15 years close to?
15 years now.
Roughly about 15 years?
Roughly about 15 years.
15 years. So that's a long journey, I think, given the kind of things which we speak of. Companies today, right? So, how has this whole journey been, and what are the different challenges which you have faced, and how was your thought process evolving over these years, and the maturity level of course, that also kind of grows along this line, right?
Absolutely. I think like what you pointed out, right? That maturity level is something that kind of evolves over a period of time.
Right.
And that's also a factor of what you are exposed to. And like I was talking about, what is the aspiration of companies, right? So also, what we do and what we end up doing also kind of is defined by, what's the aspiration that we kind of set for ourselves.
True.
And that's not a constant. Right. So probably when I kind of started out, the aspiration that probably I set out for, let's say, for myself or the company might have been very, very different as compared to what it is right now. Right. And what it is right now, again, is a factor of what kind of people I am getting exposed to, what kind of communities I am getting exposed to, right? Who is inspiring me, right? So all of those things kind of shape up, what those aspirations are, and then it kind of boils down to, how we kind of conduct ourselves, what's the company strategy, what kind of people we hire, so on and so forth, right? So at least in the initial phases, maybe it feels like, getting a client, getting a project, that is the challenge. But over a period of time, although many people probably think that, let's say, a job of an HR or job of a recruiter is probably not really looked up as such. Probably, but I think that I have the greatest respect for them, because the key challenge for me is hiring the right kind of people, right? And if you get that right, I think you would have probably done 50 to 60% of your job. And having hired the right kind of people, and if you probably get the environment right and have a direction for them, probably you have done close to another 30%. So that's about 80% of your job done. Right. So for me, the key, I would say the main work is to actually have the right kind of people in the team, giving them the opportunity to kind of explore themselves, and also aligning their efforts towards a certain goal, and putting together processes so that everybody is kind of aligned towards a certain goal. I think that's the majority of the work, and that's where all the challenges that kind of come in. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't get it right, right? So that is what I feel is it's not just my challenge. I think anybody who is looking at scaling, I think getting the right kind of people and making sure that the environment is right and everybody is kind of aligned towards that goal. That's a key challenge for anybody, I feel.
I think anybody who is an entrepreneur, I think, would probably relate to these problems. I think
Absolutely.
Because finding the right team and then making sure that everybody is aligned with that whole goal of what they are trying to achieve, and having the trust on those people. I think that's at the core of any team, whatever they kind of do going forward.
Yeah.
Right.